Today, I want to show you one of the oldest openings ever recorded in history of chess, the Scandinavian Defense. The Scandinavian Defense is the oldest recorded move opening for black, and it is really common to play as well, where in uh, in the reply to e4 you say d5. The most usual reply these days for e4 is actually e5, but d5 is probably the second or the third most common reply. Not ideally the best reply, but the most common. And once you have played e4, e5, this starts the Scandinavian defense, and now you can go in really different dimensions. But the core idea of the Scandinavian defense is this: just have the battle now. You don't really want to, the Scandinavian defense essentially pushes white to make a decision to have the battle then and there or to not. When you play e5, you actually invite white to have more of a developmental game before having some sort of trade. But Scandinavian defense asks right in front, do you want to trade or not? So the Scandinavian defense mainly diverges into two different branches. They are when the opposition takes my pawn and when the opposition does not take my pawn. Well, for white, the best move here is to actually take this pawn. E takes d5. But the second most common move is actually playing e5, and the third most common is playing d3. Well, let's start with what happens if the opposition does not take it. So EXD5 in its entirety is a different branch that we will consider. But in a more the shorter branch that I would want to tell you is to actually play D3. If the opposition does decide to play D3 or any other random move, let's say knight to C3 or sorry, knight to C3 or knight to F6, in all those cases, taking on the pawn is actually a good idea. In this particular case, it might e6 might also be better, but let's say that the opposition played d3, then taking on the pawn is actually the best idea, and you should actually go along that. The opposition may or may not take on this pawn because if they do, then we'll snatch away castling rights from the opponent, and that is in fact better. White will most likely take on this pawn because uh, it really clears a lot of clutter in mind that starts by playing the Scandinavian. In a beginner-friendly match, these moves are really common, and once this happens, you should ideally take on the queen and refrain white from doing castling at all. After this, the most usual developments can go along. So knight c6, followed by maybe knight d2 or bishop d3. Uh, Bishop d3 is actually bishop d3 may look better to you because after moving knight d2, you don't really allow bishop to come outside. But of course, the idea of shadowing is there for white. But yeah, we are looking after black, and you could maybe play f5, and if he tries to trade, then bring your bishop out, then later bring your knight out, play e5 finally, and bring your bishop out and castle maybe long side, because the king is here, and you will have a good position if you play along these lines. So whenever the opposition allows you to take on his pawn, do take it. That's probably the best option, and then just play the game naturally. What happens if the opposition does decide to take on my pawn? Well, you have offered him a pawn, and you can do a lot of things here. So, if the opposition does decide to take on the pawn, you do have a lot of options, and one of the options is really interesting to me. So, I'll show that first. It may not be the best, but let's see that option first. So, that is to play c6. And this invites you to another gambit called the Blackburn Klooster Boer Gambit. I'm sorry if I could not pronounce it correctly, but let's see what it is. So you offer on the c6 pawn, and the opposition will most likely take it. There are no issues to it. From here, you could actually, capture on this pawn and have be on a loss of one pawn for a development of a knight. But another interesting approach to this entire thing is to play Queen C7. Now, it is a bad move. I'll warn you. Engine says it's a bad move. It's not good at all. But the thing is that when we are playing this entire game at a very beginner level, then most players don't know how to handle what will come when the opposition does decide to take the pawn on b7 as well. C takes b7 is the best move for white, but it is only the best move for white if white knows how to handle the entire situation. If he does not, then look at what is happening. This entire line is going into a very aggressive attack direction. And if white does decide to castle on the short side, white will be in deep trouble. So currently we are at the loss of two pawns, and loss of two pawns is really bad in chess. It's almost like saying that I traded a bishop for a pawn, and yeah, that is bad, isn't it? But black still can defend the position, especially in matches where mistakes and blunders are allowed to happen. So you do have a good attacking, aggressive advantage to it. The most common reply for white will be, he'll start playing knight f3 and try to protect on this pawn so that this bishop can come out. In such situations, you should ideally start developing your pieces. So knight f6, knight c6, or maybe knight d7. Just start moving. Do not castle on the long side because the long side is actually open, but rather start attacking, start being aggressive as fast as you can. So yeah, let's say we move knight f6 and then the opposition will maybe give us a check. We can defend it with knight c6 and the game can keep on going. But first, let me show you something really interesting. This is from the perspective of white when black is trying to play the Scandinavian defense, and that is punishing the early queen. So if black does decide to take on the pawn with d5, then we can go along interesting lines. Firstly, the obvious move that we have is to try to push this queen away. And there are a few moves that black could pursue. One is bringing the queen back to d8. The other is bringing the queen to the square of a5, and the third is bringing the queen back to d6. But the interesting one of them is bringing queen to a5. Why would a player bring his queen to a5? Well, he doesn't really want White to have more lead in development. White was the first mover. White always has the first mover's advantage. Anyways, so I'm allowing to develop knight, and then I am saying that okay, get another piece out of the board. I don't really want white to have that. So I want that if my queen is out, then it should remain out, but in a safe square. And black believes that a5 is a safe square, which actually it is. But there are a few things. This square is only safe if black knows how to play it safe. But there are chances that when we play the following gambit that I'm going to tell you, black might fall into it. So the gambit is this: play b4. When you play b4, the best move for black is actually to take on this pawn. That is fair. But if black doesn't know what he is doing, then it's a bad move. Because now I can play rook to b1. And rook to b1 really, threatens black as to what it is doing. So there are a few lines where this entire game can go now. One of them, one of them is actually taking this queen back to a5. Now, queen back to a5 is actually a bad move. Why? Because you can play rook to b5. And now the queen is slowly and steadily getting, cornered out. So it will go behind onto the a6 square. And now you can clearly see the problem. The problem is this bishop. Whenever the rook moves, it will lead to a discovery onto the queen. And if the rook moves to some standard square or some good square, then we can actually entrap the queen. Well, this is what has been happening. And now we are wondering how could we take advantage of this entire situation? Well, this is how you take advantage. You ignore the queen. You play knight to f3. So yeah, this is the entire line along the game. But this is not what the best moves might be, but just look at it and look at how fun it might get. And now I want you to consider the situation from the black's perspective. What do you think black should move? If you said that c6 might be a good option, then my friend, this gambit would have worked on you entirely. Because c6 actually restricts the file where the queen could have escaped. And now you are saying that okay, I don't have any plans of escaping here. I definitely don't have any plans of escaping here. So I am sitting on the only possible square I am safe at. So how should white take advantage of it? So actually, um, in this position, you don't even need to defend your rook. You can really do anything at this point. Maybe because see, the thing is that this bishop is actually guiding this rook. Protecting this rook, and this knight is protecting the rook as well. So in pawn takes, this bishop will come here and look at what the sorry, and look at what the bishop is doing. The bishop is attacking the king and the queen at the same time. So that is why at this position as well, you could play any random move. Let's say bishop to b2, and the opposition cannot really take on this rook. If the opposition does decide to do so, will force the queen and will have the queen and will win the entire game. But there are other variants of it. Rather than just moving the bishop, we could push this pawn over. So yeah, that is also one of the available moves, which might in fact be even better than doing that. So, but still, the opposition cannot really take on my rook, and the queen is still sitting there trapped. The opposition can actually still save himself from this entire gambit. So what you essentially have to do is you also have to ignore this threat and in fact keep developing. And no matter what he'll try to do, you can really bring your pieces out and then slowly start saving yourself, because now that this knight is here and this knight is not being threatened by anybody, this rook is free to be taken, and this entire fourth thing cannot really hold. So white will have to come back, and black can be saved, because at this point, the a5 square is safe again. So queen to a5, and you don't white cannot really target my queen anymore now. Maybe rook to a3 is one option, but that won't work because I'll just go back to d8. So yeah, but the idea was this, that if the queen does come out, and if the holder of the queen doesn't really know what to do with it, then I can really trouble the queen in very nasty ways. And if black doesn't really know how to play, if he's knave and he takes on my rook, then I'll save the queen as I like. What if the opposition doesn't play c6? What if the opposition sees that, oh no, my queen will be blocked? So, he might try to make this move, queen to e6 check. And checks are a really good way of, defending yourself, because you essentially have the tempo advantage. But in this particular case, you don't, because I can block it with knight to e5. And at first, it might look like, you are unnecessarily pinning a piece randomly there in on the fifth file. Maybe you might say that bishop to e2 was a better option, because bishop on e2 square is protected by the knight, the queen, and the king himself. But this knight there is only protected by the rook, and this pin might be coming up. This pin might be coming up. How do you plan to handle that? See, the idea is this: if the opponent if he ever does decide to, threaten me with a pawn, this thing will be coming up. Because this knight was not just there to protect me from the check, but rather to help gain this bishop some support. And now the queen is in a really bad trouble, because the queen can literally go nowhere, as I have a good attack planned on the f7 square as well. So, for example, let's say that the queen does go back to a6. It isn't really going to help you, because now even this diagonal is opened up, and this king is under attack. This bishop can come in, and this bishop can really attack the king, and this rook is going to come in, and things are going to get really bad for black. So let's say I go along the lines of queen to h5. So queen to h5 check has only two options. Let's say the king does go back. Well, if this pawn takes, then I can take with the knight and really have the rook for free currently. But maybe I'll have even better lines. So yeah, if this pawn comes here, then I can essentially give him check with the bishop also. And once he goes back to d8, I again have a lot of options to take on to. So one of them is taking on this, and the best possible way for black to defend will be knight to h6, and then I can have the bishop, and then when the rook takes bishop, then I'll take knight, and those are the ideas that we could go along. But we also have to consider that this rook is also, oh no, this rook is supported, so yeah, we don't really have to care about that. But you can see how bad black is in this position. So yeah, let's say that this position does occur, then we can take on it. And if black does decide to commit some sort of a mistake, let's say he, he okay, let's say he's playing perfectly. He's playing knight to h6, then you can give this check, and there are only two good ways of defending it, either bishop or knight. Let's bring either of them. Let's say that knight does come to d7. Then you again have this particular plan, but the queen is still guarding here, so hold on to that plan and maybe take the rook. And yeah, now that you have taken the rook, this entire thing is more safe. There is nothing that black can do right now. Maybe try to push my rook away, but yeah, now we have got into, we are really in a position where we can take a lot of advantage. We are already 5 points up in material, and black is losing completely. So clearly, when did black start losing? Black started losing when he tried to threaten my knight. He forgot that this knight is actually protecting this square. So the best possible way to move away is just moving your queen away. But you might argue that, okay, the knight, really opening up this file and bringing the queen in was a bad idea. I agree. But what if I try to threaten your rook? The rook is a huge source of problem, isn't it? Well, the best move still is bishop to c4, because it doesn't really matter if this file is opened up or not. I was anyways attacking on the f7 square, and the f7 square is all that mattered. So in this situation, if the queen does decide to come back to d6, well, sorry, you are too late. I'll be taking on this pawn. You can come here. I don't really care. The next best move that I can have is taking on this, because I am essentially making this square free. If he decides to take on the bishop, then I'll have the fork and take away your queen. But if you don't even take on that, if you make some move like maybe bishop to e6 to really get this trade-off done and have this square safer, you don't really want me to fork on this square, then I'll bring my bishop in from this side. I don't really want your queen on this file. This is my way of distraction of your bishop, because if your queen does really move away, then I can take on this bishop, and really have my game sorted in one sense of the word. Because now nothing that you'll do if you make some random moves, I'll just come inside. I'll basically g6 was to protect the queen from coming in here, but now that the queen can't come in here, we can come here. If the opposition does really try to move here, the next thing that I can do is take on the rook, and you can see that I'm clearly knocking off every piece of black, and that is why this position is really risky for black. Uh, this move and this move are really tempting, but they are really bad. That gambit goes along in different directions as well. For example, when black decided to take on this pawn, it wasn't really like currently black has been black. The game isn't really that losing for black. In fact, it's a draw. And after we move my rook to b1, now black does have lots of options, as we saw. So the problem with a5 is something that we have realized, that whenever the queen goes back to a5, black will be in fact in a very losing condition. And so the best move that could be played for black is actually queen to d6. So queen to d6 is the only possible best solution. But as the black player, I don't really see look out to these other options. And going to a5 is something that if I've realized is not good enough, then another option that I could have played is maybe going to d4. But going to d4 again has some of its problems, because the best move that white will play is knight to f3. So yeah, let's look at it from the white's perspective. So knight to f3 has been played by us, and more likely than not, this queen will now go back. It is too much in trouble. You know, this these squares are actually uh, dangerous to go to because these knights will capture me there. This square has the bishop here, and I don't really want to come here because then this bishop will come up. So I don't really see many good options in the center of the board. So I just want to go back. But the moment I decide to go back, White really tries to play with me even more because now this bishop can really come up. There are other lines to it as well because now this bishop can come here, bishop to a3, and that is something another sort of a not the ideal or the perfect move, but again at a beginner level this will be really advantageous because your opponent will be just confused as to what is happening because now the e pawn can't move, and the e pawn when the e pawn can't move, development for black is hindered really much because whenever he moves it out, let's say he decides to play e6, then I'll have the bishop, and you lose your rights to castling. So yeah, trading of the b pawn was not so bad, was it? So he'll really try not to do this. In fact, this entire scenario that I'm telling you, when queen came to d4, is actually the scenario of very famous game that is available on the internet. I don't really remember the name, but these are the moves that the black player played. And once he realized that the e pawn cannot be moved, he decided that going for a fianchetto is a great idea because I want to get rid of this knight here, and if these pawns are doubled, then maybe have a queen trade on the d5. The game went further down the rabbit hole. After the move for fianchetto, and when the bishops were out, White decided to play knight to e4 after the bishop was done with fianchettoing. And from this position, Black decided to make c6 as his next move. I don't really I couldn't really understand why c6 might have come to his mind, but I think that was more of a waiting move, seeing what White could do. But he couldn't really understand that playing c6 was a bad move. In fact, the engine now shows that White is winning in a very good way. And so White moved the best move possible here. That was Queen to e2. Now, why was Queen to e2 so good? Queen to e2 was so good because of this and possibly this discovered check as well. Not discovered check, but just checks. The problem is that the pawn cannot really take on these squares. Although the bishop and this knight can take on this square, so I'm not really talking about knight to f6 check, but rather I'm talking about knight to d6 check. And this is what was coming up for black. For example, if black didn't really consider anything and moved knight to f6, then the entire situation would have been a really big problem. Although it is already a big problem, but knight to f6 just adds another blunder to it because now I can give him this check, and he can't really take it with this pawn. He can't take it with this queen because the bishop will take away his queen. In fact, the engine shows that the best move for black is right now is to take the knight with the queen. Because let's say if he does decide to go here, then I can take on this bishop. If he takes back, uh, I can simply deliver him this checkmate. But apparently, in the game that I have taken from the internet, the opponent realized what was happening. The opponent realized that this knight was coming in, and this check would be fatal because of this particular pin. And that is why he decided to move the king away to just, escape from the check itself, and in fact, not be pinned either. But there was another problem in this situation, and White decided to take beautiful advantage of it. White made a very unnatural looking move, but possibly the best move that White could move here. That was bishop takes f7. Bishop takes f7 is so powerful because if and the opposition does took on this bishop. So if king takes on bishop, then you really have a lot of moves coming in. This knight can come in here, this knight can come in here, this queen is coming in here. But in the game, not these moves were made, but rather rook takes b7. Well, rook takes b7 is another so random looking move because in fact rook takes b7 is also not possibly the best move. It loses, I mean it doesn't lose, but it reduces the advantage that white had. But here's the core idea of rook takes b7. I don't want this bishop to guard this file because I want to attack through this file. So I'll do anything and everything that really distracts this bishop. In the game, the opponent decided to take on this rook, and yeah, that was it for black because now knight came to g5, knight to g5 check, and there isn't really much that the opponent can do because now you have only two squares to go back to, either f8 or either e8. Let's say that he decides to go back to e8 because in f8 there is a classic problem that you can see, this fork, and the queen will be dead. But if he does decide to go back to e8, even then he is lost because now this check comes in and you are in the same problem as before. You could definitely sacrifice your queen for a knight. We'll gladly accept it, but I mean, I'm sure you would not want to do that. And even if you think this is an escape option, I'm sorry, it's not. It's a mate in one. And these mates are also really good to see. Two knights delivering a checkmate that no one else could. So clearly, this entire line can go really good for white when the queen is out. So that is why you should be really careful while accepting that pawn with the queen. And returning back to d8 might also be the best option. Although the engine says that once you have taken this pawn, the best option is some depends, of course, it depends on what the opposition has played. But if you have the opposition has played knight to c3, then your best option is to actually return to d6, not to d8. So another important idea after queen goes to a5 is actually for white to play d4. But this situation will be dealt with the black's perspective. So we are trying to learn the Scandinavian defense, right? So previous one was just showing you how the queen could be trapped and how could you possibly escape it. But now that we are here, let's consider it from the black's perspective. So the opposition has played d4, and at this point you are really considering all your options. So one of the major lines is actually to play c6. Why? Because you really want to create this escape path for your queen, because we just saw that the queen could have some trouble staying on a5 square. c6 is one possible path. Another possible path is to maybe play e5, to really get this exchange and then get your queen here and check the king with tempo. And whatever it does, then you keep on developing. So yeah, those are two lines. There is, of course, the normal developmental line, but we'll look at it later. Right now, if we decide to play c6, then the most next common moves will be knight to f3, knight to f6, and after that is done, the usual bishop development is what goes along this line. There is another move for black that black needs to be really careful about is when bishop goes to g4. Bishop goes to g4 might be a little problematic because once white starts pushing you, till this situation it is fine. But when you go back to here, white also has the move of making knight to e5. And knight to e5 is a little tricky to defend because now you really have to bring your knight here and have possible chances of escaping, exchanging. And this entire situation will give you a little trouble because of this central pawn helping this knight and this bishop helping it here too. And after this has happened, this knight can actually go back to c4 and try to attack my queen. And after knight moves to c4, black doesn't really have any option but to get his queen back to d8. So queen to d8 is the only possible safe square for the queen left now. And you can clearly see that white is at an advantage now because his pieces are really out. You don't have any material advantage as well. These knights, although they are supporting each other and are controlling a little bit of the center, but clearly white has a little better position. I mean, if you had a choice, you would want to play as white in this position. Another main idea after queen goes to a5 is actually to have this fianchetto, not this one, but yeah, playing g3. And black will keep on developing in his normal way. And once you have done this, the most obvious move for black is, of course, to play c6, because of you want to really, you really want to safeguard the square. Although you might have better moves, maybe bring knight to c6, and but bringing knight to c6 really helps you, really gets these pawns doubled. So yeah, you can differentiate between ideas of which move develops in which direction. And finally, if the fianchet is not working, we'll bring our knight out, and the game will continue on in this particular sense. We can obviously see that we can get a castle and bring this rook to b1, finally push on the b file and try to threaten the queen, but the queen already has a safe path to escape to. Well, another line, in fact, one of the main lines is actually to play queen to d6. Well, when queen goes to d6, the main ideas for white are to now eventually play, d4 and then a g2 and then fianchettoing and then knight to f3, eventually castling along the short side and really no, just small little developments that lead to a good structure. Again, another very common line is to just retreat. Well, just retreating is also fine, but you will of course give white a little advantage. And yeah, this game goes along playing the game naturally, just developing your pieces and not blundering your pieces. The line along queen to e5 check or queen to e6 check do not really work out great, because if you do go along the lines of queen to e5 check, then it can be simply defended with the bishop, and any developmental move will lead to knight coming on to f3 and again threatening our queen. So you should not really make your queen a liability in the beginning of the game. And because in this particular position, the queen will have no other chance but to go back to queen to c7. And you can see that white is really ahead in development now. It has three pieces out. You have practically no pieces out, although the queen sits on c7, but it isn't really that working right now. Another reply that white could give to is playing d4. And after this, we also have a few moves, maybe moving e5 or making the move knight to c6. Knight to c6 also leads to the Nimzowitz defense. This entire position can be brought out in an entirely different way, where e4 is the first move, and we reply with knight c6, and then d4, then d5, and when exchange happens with the queen, we reach to the exact same situation. From here, if the opponent does reply with knight to f3, that is the basic development, and then we could go for bishop g4, pinning this knight against the queen, and then the opposition can, just do the usual stuff. After this, long castle is our best option, and we can really see that we have formed a battery. If in the next move this knight, this bishop is not dealt with, we can maybe exchange and have this pawn for free, and then really try to exchange and be a pawn up in material. And in fact, we are also up in position wise, because we have already castled. Our pieces are out, although the opposition's pieces are out as well. But we are at a good advantage in this game. Another line that the game could go into. Now it's just lines after lines, but yeah, this is one of the options that the opponent could take. Knight to f3. You could again pin this knight whenever they try to defend it. You just keep on developing, and you can see that options for both players to castle has opened up. So most likely now a short castle followed by a long castle will happen, and now the game is really aggressive, because opposite side kings, when kings castle on the opposite sides, the game gets really aggressive. You push your own pawns, they push their own pawns, and you know that war is about to come. Another line where this entire game could go is this, that when you have offered your pawn and they have taken it, from the black side, we could not take this pawn immediately, but play knight to f6. And this is the modern variation of the Scandinavian defense. So the core idea is this, that you lose material in order to not fall behind in development. And the opponent does the same. The opponent also starts developing quickly. He doesn't really want to save this pawn. But once we do take this pawn, so Of course, you would take it with the knight or with the queen. But would you take it with the queen? Because if you would have wanted to, then you could have already taken with the queen without even developing the knight. But developing the knight had the idea of saving your queen because early development of queen is bad, as we have been taught. But once this happens, White really tries to delay the development of Black by he keeps pushing on Black behind. From here, Black does have three options: maybe to go here, maybe to go here, or maybe to go here. Knight to b4 is actually a little tricky to play, and it invites the obvious Queen to a4 check. And Queen to a4 check is problematic for us because it is taking both my knight and my queen. Now, you need to be really careful that you do not bring this knight back here, because if you bring a knight on the fourth row to c6, then the pawn push from d5 will trap my knight. I'll lose my knight. So rather, bring your knight from the eighth five to c6, and this is what you can in fact play, because now if they really try to push you, you can actually see the entire problem. The entire problem is this. When you eventually push this pawn, now you can see that this isn't really pinned now. And if queen takes, then I can have this fork and really take on, because the queen will only have my knight and I'll have the rook as well. Although they do have my pawn, but at this position, if pawn decides to take on b5, even then, I can place this knight to d4, because now this entire pin has been removed. If they really try to, be over smart and play b6, then I'll just defend it. You can't really take on this knight. Why? Because this fork hangs, and this triple fork will be really bad for white. So for the queen cannot really take on this knight. But the thing is, the queen doesn't have much options to go to, and so it decides to go back to d1. And once that happens, you need to give a fork. But think again, which knight should you give the fork with? Should you give the fork with B or with C? Sorry, B or with D? Well, the answer is to give the fork with the D knight, because if you would have given it the fork with the B knight, yes, the king would have moved away and you could have taken the rook. But now this queen will be hanging, this queen will be attacking the knight on the d5. So why not move this one only? Because this knight isn't under attack by anyone. So let it be there. Let it be the one that provides support rather than being the one that requires support. In this situation, fight could also reply with different things. We saw d4, but another common reply could be c4. The intentions for c4 are clear. We do not want to lose any material advantage. But if we see it from the black's perspective, we could play many moves now. C6 is what we call the Scandinavian gambit, where we allow the opposition to take on this pawn. So if d takes c6, I could actually take on this pawn with the knight and have more positional advantage. My pieces are two of my knights are out, and just one pawn of white is out there on a very random square, which is not even properly defended. I have somehow, I mean, white himself has blocked the development of his bishop. He can't come on to the c4 square or maybe to the b5 square to pin my knight. So you can clearly see that offering a pawn really helped me get ahead in development. And there could be another gambit played here that is called the rose gambit. So if you play e5 and the opposition decides to take on the b7 square, you can take it back with the bishop. And even though now you are 2 pawns behind, but the game is very equal because you have got great development. You are controlling this square, you are controlling the entire diagonal, and so you are essentially controlling the entire center. And while white is doing nothing, but white does have two free pawns. So yeah, that is the trade between developing early versus having more material for the end of the game. There's another really cool gambit. It's called the Tennyson gambit that can be played in the Scandinavian defense. So when you have offered your free pawn, white decides to not take that free pawn, and in fact, give his pawn for free. So that is when he plays knight to f3. Although, again, this is a gambit and it might really turn out bad for white, but white is taking his chances. And if black does decide to take on this pawn, white places his knight in the center. But the thing is, no one really likes the opposition's knight in the center of the board. And that is why they might try to push it off. But that is when your gambit will work. If they have tried to push it off, then you are at a huge advantage and you can play queen to h5 check. And queen to h5 check really forces black to make the move g6 because he has no other possible move to make. And at this point, you can take on this. And when pawn takes, then you can, in fact, take on the rook. But there is another option that you could pursue, and that is bishop to b5 check. Bishop to b5 check also harms black more. And no matter how they try to defend it with maybe knight takes c6, even in that scenario, you can actually take on this pawn and really get the rook for free. And there's like this knight is also unsavable. The only option is when the king comes on to the f7 square. In such scenarios as well, you can in fact trade first and then give this check by queen to h7, maybe. But this bishop will come anyways, so going back to h4 is also a good option in the entire Tennyson's gambit. And for one of the last branches, the opposition also has the option to play e5. Well, when white decides to play e5, now my threat of taking losing a pawn is gone, and I can in fact make the move c5, really opening up my queen side for any sort of attack, and in fact even planning to put my queen side bishop on the fifth row, or if this knight really comes out, then maybe I can actually pin it against the queen. So yeah, those are my ideas. Eventually, I would want to play e6 and make this entire situation in a French defense sort of a thing. But if I can somehow move my bishop out before I make the move e6, then it will be even more better than the French defense because now I have my bishop out as well. So that is it for today, guys. This was a brief introduction to the Scandinavian defense. There are many more lines around this opening. And in fact, we might have not even discussed the best moves against the best moves, but rather the moves that could be more famous or the moves that are more popular. And you can really try playing the Scandinavian defense if you ever get the black pieces. We tend to learn a lot of openings with the white pieces, but we should also learn opening with the black pieces, especially against e4 because e4 is so popular. If you want to watch more such content, please subscribe to our channel. And if you want to watch anything in particular, do drop us a comment, and we will definitely make a video on it. Thank you.